Welcome to the Skandimama DIY of the big comfy boxy dress. You need for the top 4 layers of fabrics in 2 folds to make both the front and the back piece at the same time, and then the folded t-shirt where the center fold of the t-shirt is aligned with the fold of the fabric. Take a marker or a crayon or a tailor's chalk and trace around the t-shirt approximately a couple of centimeters for seam allowance on the shoulder point and very close to the neck opening. In the sides you want a big boxy dress, so give it 5 to 7 centimeters extra, and make the sleeves as long as you like, as much as the fabric will allow you to. Then cut where you have marked, and now you have the top bit, both the front and the back piece. So to make the neck opening, I trace very close to the edge of where the t-shirt that's lying on my fabric is. It's better to make it too small when you cut it the first time than way too big, since it's impossible to change that around. To make the front piece, open up one of the folds, mark a couple of centimeters down on that folded piece, and make sure to only cut that folded piece in the middle. So you only cut one piece for the front of the dress. For the skirt part of the dress, again you need 4 layers of fabric in 2 folds. I'm making it very wide, very big. So it's 2 full widths of the fabric. Make sure the 2 folds are aligned. Now we need the top bit. So even though the top was very boxy, very wide, the skirt is even wider. So it's going to be gathered like this, so it needs a lot of extra material. Almost double. And you can see here how it's going to gather. Go a couple of centimeters down on the center fold of the fabric and make a nice curve, not all the way to the end of the fabric to the corner, but stop it perhaps 15-20 centimeters before, and then draw a straight line that goes down to the bottom corner. And here again you want to make a curve, so go a couple of centimeters up and then trace a nice curve all the way down to the center fold on the other side. This is where you'll cut. You can make it just a box. You don't need to make the curves. It's just something I like to do to give it more of a visual. It's just something I like to do. You can easily just make it a rectangular box that you attach to the top part of your dress. Gather, gather, gather. Lots of lovely ruffles. We're going to put them on when we get to it. First, I'm going to stitch the top part of the dress, shoulder seams together and the side seams together. And I've cut under the sleeves quite an angle, and I'm just going to sew that as close to the angle as I can and just making a little curve as I get to it. And of course I'm doing it on my serger, where I'm just stitching it all in one go. You can also serge the parts together first and then afterwards stitch them together, or give them with your zigzag stitch first and then afterwards stitch them together. It's important that the ends don't fray, but you decide how you want to do it. I like it to be really quick, and I love my serger overlock machine. Alright, you can see here how it's easy enough to follow that curve under the arms. And that is the top bit stitched together. Now we need the sleeve openings, zigzag stitch or an overlock stitch. All the way around the sleeve opening. And the next sleeve opening as well. For the skirt, it needs to be stitched together down the side seam, so place the fabric front to front and then you just stitch all the way down from the top to the bottom. Make sure your fabric is facing the right way, so both front sides of the fabric facing in towards each other, and make sure the seam going down is nice and straight. One side done, and off to the other side. Yeah, I'm going to sew all the way down there. Again, I'm just doing it on my serger overlock machine straight away. You could also zigzag the end bits first, zigzag the edges first, and then stitch them together. It's just really quick with this machine. And now the bottom of the dress. So that's a lot of width to go through. So I'm just going to pop it into the machine. Make sure the edges don't fray. Overlock or zigzag all the way at the bottom of the dress opening. Oh, and there's quite a bit to go here. It's a white dress. 2 full widths of the fabric. So that's pretty much 280 centimeters, almost 3 meters, going through the machine. And that was it. Now the skirt bit is done. Needs to be attached to the top. The top, even if it's wide, is still quite narrow compared to the dress. So we need to make lots of gathers, lots of ruffles here. I'm putting the top on top of the dress bit, making sure the fabric is facing front to front, finding the side seams. One side seam there, and I'm attaching some clips to make sure it stays. Then I'm going to find the other side seam, attaching a clip there as well. And then I basically just, again, find the center of the top, the center of the dress bit in the middle here, center of the dress front, center of the top front, put them together with clips. Do the same for the other side. And this is what I do to make sure that it's the same amount of fabric that's going to be all around the dress, so that when I gather it, there's not going to be a lot of ruffles on one side and then hardly any on the other side. And you can also do this in a different way. You can first stitch it up with a loose hand stitch or a basting stitch, and then simply pull the thread very carefully, and then you get lots of ruffles, and it's perhaps easier to sew it onto the top bit. I know my machine, and I've done this so many times, and I actually think the results are quite nice, even though it's not as perfect as you could perhaps do it. But I still make sure that there's a decent same amount of gathering all the way around the dress. Then into the overlock machine. Be careful of the clips that you don't stitch. Don't try to sew over them, because the machine won't like that. And then I have the skirt bit on the top of the fabric, so I can gather that as I go. Gather, and make sure it's approximately the same amount. So it's basically just lots of little mini pleats that I place all the way around. And I can see on this video here, it actually looks like my fingers get caught in the machine all the time. They don't. But it looks quite scary, so be careful of your fingers, please do. So I distribute all this fabric, try to do it evenly. The clips are a really good help, and I am way around now. And I could of course argue that it would be a good thing to do this just on a normal sewing machine, so it's much easier to undo it if you aren't happy with the result. But again, I just done it enough times to know that I'll be happy enough with this result. It will be looking like I want it to. And then if not, there is enough fabric to cut that serger stitch off and just start again. And that's done. And now the dress is ready to fold out. You can see where it's been stitched together, you can see all the ruffles, and looking good. It's time for the lovely big dress with the Lisa Congdon print. It's a boxy top here at the top, and then a big box towards the bottom. So it's a long dress, a big dress, super comfortable. Nothing that's going to feel tight on this dress. Need to do the opening here, the neckline, the sleeves, and the bottom. Going to start with the bottom here. I'm going to take the fabric, fold it a couple of centimeters towards the back, and pop it into the sewing machine. Going to start on a side seam. And I'm stitching right on top of the overlock seam. And it's quite a wide base of this dress, so there is a lot to go through. We reached one side seam, cut the threads, and that was the bottom. A lot. And now it's time for the sleeves. I could do the same as I did with the bottom. I could just fold it a couple of centimeters towards the back and stitch it in place. But I actually have this cute bias tape that I'm going to use for the neck opening, and I'm going to use that on the sleeves as well. So I'm going to fold it out. So we've got the right fold unfolded, and then I'm going to fold the corner here, and then I'm going to pop it onto my sleeve, and make sure, because now of course this is overlocked, so I need to make sure that I stitch underneath that edge so you can't see the overlock edge peeping out from where I put the bias tape. And then I simply stitch right in this fold, all the time checking that I'm covering the overlock properly. And it matches totally in colour. Could also be kind of cool if you just used a contrasting fabric or contrasting bias tape colour. When you reach the end, you just make sure there's a little overlap and then you cut it here and continue sewing in the fold here. Yeah. And now we have the bias tape all the way around the sleeve, and then I fold it, and I fold it all the way. So I simply fold it here on the seam where the bias tape and the fabric meets. Sometimes you can fold it so you can still see some of the bias tape. I fold the bias tape all the way to the back. And then I get ready to stitch it in place. Pop it into the sewing machine. Cut the thread. Of course you have to check your distance to make sure that you have the bias tape secured in place with your stitch. It works perfectly on this side. Time to do the other one. Fold out the right side and fold the middle. Put it on top of the fabric and stitch along the little fold line of the bias tape. Pull the bias tape in and stitch again. Lastly, done. Now it's time to just try it on, just to see how the neck opening actually fits. Nice. I always like to cut the neck opening a little bit too small on the small side. Then I can try it on when I've stitched the parts together, see if I need to cut it a little bit more open, cut it a bit deeper. That's much better than doing it the other way around, where you just cut way too much off and then you're kind of stuck with a super wide neck that, yeah, is just not easy to wear. This was good, luckily. Don't need to do anything about this. So I take my bias tape. So we start on one of the shoulder seams, open this bias tape, open the right side, fold this over, place it along the line here. This has not been finished off with an overlock. This is just a raw edge, and that's fine. So the bias tape, the edge of this kind of unfolded bias tape is up against the edge of the fabric of the neck opening. Going forward, and again you sew into that little fold. Make sure the end of the bias tape, the end of the fabric are aligned. All the way around the neck opening. Done soon. We're almost there. The tiniest of overlaps here, and I cut the bias tape off and then just finish sewing in the fold and threads. The bias tape around the neck opening, almost done, just needs the final touch. Just going to we'll turn it so it's facing the right. Wow, it's a lot of fabric. Wow. Okay. So again, you could fold it all the way, just like we did with the sleeve, fold it all the way in. But I actually like there to be a little bit of bias tape showing here. So I fold it on the middle here, and that makes it a little bit challenging for me because I need to sew now. I need to stitch just very, very close to the edge without going too far to either side to make sure that the bias tape inside here is also stitched on. But I'm up for the challenge, can manage. Nice. Cutting the threads last time here, and a beautiful bias tape neck opening. Just so ready to wear this dress. small.